Good morning, everyone. Don Gillis with Emerson Educational Services. Been on the road quite a long time. Just got back in the office today for at least 1 week, and wanted to knock the dust off and maybe do another video for you. And the first thing I'm going to start out with, because I had quite a few people reach out to me, and we've been teaching a lot on the road. We've been all over the place, all over the U.S. And evidently, a couple people that saw us train made some comments about I really like the way you teach the refrigeration cycle, and I'm going to do a series of these when I get back in the summertime when I'm off the road. I tried it on the hotel. It didn't work out that well. It's just too much to take on at one time for me anyways. But I had a couple people specifically that were named names, and there's a Terry from Michigan and Rob's from San Antonio, Texas. So this is for you guys. Hopefully somebody can get something out of it. I know we all understand the refrigeration cycle, but everybody does it differently. So let's just say it's just to knock the rust off old Don for today, okay? Let's walk through the 4 basic components. We have the evaporator, we have the compressor, we have the condenser, and we have some type of metering device. In this case, it's going to be a TXV, okay? What does the evaporator do? I like to say it absorbs heat, okay? There's a lot going on in the evaporator. We're changing state. We're going from a liquid to a vapor as we come through our meter device. I want you to think of that metering device as almost like a Windex bottle. We're squeezing that trigger. It's atomized, so it's primarily liquid at the beginning. For the sake of not arguing, let's just say it's 75% liquid, 85% liquid, and the rest of it's vapor. Anytime you have any combination of liquid and vapor within each other, you have saturation. It could be one droplet of liquid, the rest vapor, you have saturation, okay? And we need saturation, right? Okay, so as we come through here, we're gonna be, and we name components for what they do, by the way. We're evaporating. When we think of evaporation, we think of rubbing alcohol on our skin. The rubbing alcohol isn't really cold, is it? It's what's the makeup of the rubbing alcohol. It causes it to evaporate really quick, and that gives us that cool feeling. It's the same thing on a sunny day. High humidity, the same thing happens. You have real high humidity, your beads of sweat, or your sweat's beading up on your skin, pardon me, okay? It doesn't have anywhere to go. The air doesn't want it because it's already saturated. It already has high humidity, right? Humidity comes down the next morning, same sweat. You don't realize it because it's just human nature. Our bodies evaporate that really quick. That's that cooling effect, all right? That's that evaporation, all right? So we're evaporating. Some people even call this a boilerator. I kind of like that. We're bubbling off. So we're primarily liquid coming through here. Let's say 75% at the beginning, 50% in the middle, 25% at the end. When we get down to the tail end here, we want to be all vapor. We want to be superheated vapor when we leave there. We need superheated vapor for our vapor pump, our compressor, right? So as we're going through there, we're absorbing the heat. And again, we're not making anything cold. Okay, we're literally removing heat from the air coming through our evaporator, leaving our evaporator. It's colder on the other side. We're removing that heat. We're heat movers, right? We're heat movers. We're moving it from one place we don't want it and putting it out somewhere where we don't care. All right? We're picking up that heat in our suction line and moving it on down the line. All right? As we get into our suction line, we come into our compressor. By the way, I'll probably get a lot of comments on this. Let's just say 85–90% of the compressors out there are refrigerant cooled, okay? So this suction gas, the first objective it's doing is, where we pick that heat up, we're cooling that motor as it comes in across the compressor, no matter what compressor it is. You're cooling it, if it's refrigerant cooled, okay? We're cooling that compressor, all right? So just to point out to you, I know everyone knows this, but this is for the folks that don't, that are just getting started. Maybe this is day one. This is the lowest point of pressure in the system. This is the highest point of pressure system. The whole idea of the compressor is what? We're taking those molecules, whether it's a scroll, reciprocating, whatever it is, we're mashing those molecules up, and the tighter we make them, the molecules start to move faster and they get warmer, okay? Anytime we raise our temperature, we're raising our pressure, right? And that's the whole idea of it. Because that's what this thing's doing. This is our pump. All across God's green earth, high pressure is chasing low pressure and hot goes to cold. And if you're into IAQ, wet goes to dry, right? So we're literally just chasing our tail around this system. Could be 365 days a year, I don't know. Okay? But high pressure is following low pressure. Hot is going to cold. And again, if you're into IAQ, wet goes to dry, right? All right, so we've raised the pressure here. We're raising that pressure. We cooled the compressor down with our suction gas. We go into our condenser. What's the condenser do? Well, obviously, we name components for what they do. We're going to condense. We're condensing, right? We're condensing from a vapor to a liquid. Technically, by the way, this line, I'm going to move it for you, just so you get a good feel for this. It's going to enter at the top of the condenser. I've never seen it not be that way. If you have, please comment below. The reason for that is vapor is lighter than liquid, right? So as it comes through here and starts to reject that heat, that fan on top of there, that's not a very good fan, rejects that heat. We're taking the air from the outside, rejecting it out from the top. As it starts to reject that heat, there it is. The closer it gets to the bottom, it starts to condense into a liquid, right? Okay, it starts to condense to a heat. Now, what type of heat are we rejecting from the condenser? Well, we're rejecting our heat from the load. We're rejecting our superheat. We're rejecting our heat from a motor. We're rejecting the heat of compressor. So there's a lot going on there at the beginning of the condenser that we don't even think about, or at least I didn't. Okay, so we're de-superheating. That's the first thing we're doing. I often tell students or technicians that back in the day when I started, and the highest SEER rating was 8 or 10 SEER, you could about bet that your temperature outside to your condensing temperature was about a 30-degree split. So in other words, if you had a 90-degree day, your condensing temperature, saturation or condensing temperature would be about 120 degrees. Now, we don't use rules of thumbs now, and that formula will not work now with the higher SEER ratings, but that's the way it worked, okay? So, and why is that? Why does the temperature need to be, the condensing temperature need to be higher, okay? Because hot goes to cold. If our condensing temperature is 120 and outside air is 90, it wants to go faster. We have a fan there, but it still wants to go there, right? It's a law of physics. Second law of the thermodynamics, actually, in a very layman's terms. All right? So we've entered the condenser. We've come out of here, come down here a liquid. Now we've condensed. Therefore, hence the condensing, we have a smaller liquid line. We don't need as much space, right? Now we're going to go down to our metering device. We all know what the metering device is. The first answer I'm going to get is it meters, right? It meters. And just as important it is to have vapor going into our vapor pumps, all superheated vapor, we have to have a full column of liquid going into our meter device. If it's flashing off or it's undercharged and you've got a mixture of vapor and liquid saturation, we're going to have problems, right? An inefficient system, right? So we want to be sure we have liquid going to our meter device. Confirm that, right? It meters. It also causes a pressure drop. We have to drop the pressure in order to drop the temperature, right? Everybody knows that. It'd be like walking up to the 7-Eleven and trying to put air in your car, air in your tire, pardon me, and you go to put your money in the pump and all of a sudden you see the hose flapping around because somebody vandalized and cut the end of it off. That pump would just constantly be running. The pressure would never build up. It has nothing to push back on it, right? So we have to have a pressure drop. We come through, in this case, expansion valve in a smaller line, liquid line, condensed line, to a larger line, hence the name expansion valve. We're expanding vapor. Vapor needs more space, right? And as we come through here, we're causing a pressure drop. When we drop the pressure, we're dropping the temperature. We drop the temperature. Also, by the way, we drop the temperature, and therefore, whatever air's coming through here, our load attracts that. It absorbs that, doesn't it? It wants to go to that warmer area. It absorbs that and picks it up. One note here, just like on the condenser, we're entering from the top. Typically, again, if you've seen this differently, please let me know. Things are changing with all the different SEER ratings. They're trying to get as much out of them as they can. On the evaporator, because it's a liquid, it would enter from the bottom because it's heavier than the vapor. In fact, if you've ever taken the door off an evaporator, like if you're in, residential, light commercial, or whatever you're into, you might notice that the bottom of the evaporator looks like it's 20, 30, 40 years old, where the top of it looks a lot newer because it's not as rusty or not, it's that moisture that's constantly on there, that condensing, right? That water. All the work's happening right down here. When we get down outside there at the top, when it turns into a vapor, we don't get as much moisture and condenser on the coils, right? We come back around. By the way, being that this is a TXV, this is a bulb. How does that work? Everyone knows how that works. TXV, this is what better helps in a fixed orifice like a cap tube or a piston of causing liquid flood back. It's not perfect. It can still happen in low load conditions, poor airflow obviously, but this bulb is filled with refrigerant. And sometimes, not all the time, but most of the time it's filled in with the same refrigerant that's in this system, in the lines, right? And it's reacting on temperature pressure. If this is superheated vapor, it gets warmer, it causes that bulb, that refrigerant inside that bulb, which by the way does not interact with the rest of the system, they're not connected, it's by itself, it stands alone. That bulb gets warmer. As it raises the temperature, it raises the pressure in that tube, okay, going back to the top of our TXV, pushing down on that diaphragm. Opens up the diaphragm, allows more liquid to come through, okay? This gets satisfied and said, yeah, I really like that, okay? That's not as hot as it was. But it's constantly, think of this, a piston and a cap tube are fixed holes. A TXV is just a moving hole, okay? Adjusting on the load conditions, all right? Okay, that's what it is. We use ACR pipe, tubing, ACR tubing in refrigeration. It's dehydrated, it's seamless, it's measured in OD, okay? So don't just be grabbing fittings out of the big box stores, especially those short curves. We can't have any of that. We get a pressure drop, especially on our suction side, but anywhere, our suction side, all right, AC. And the reason we size refrigerant lines for what they do, and I'll end it with this, I refer to them as the two V's. V as in Victor, volume and velocity, okay? We have to have the refrigerant line to be large enough to bring enough volume back to the compressor to cool the compressor for the cooling property. We have to have enough velocity for it to be small enough, not oversized, for the velocity. The velocity, we're pushing oil through there, okay? If we have too large of a suction line, we may have lack of velocity, which would cause oil not to get back to our compressor. Very, very important to understand that. The two V's is in Victor, volume and velocity. So if you ever look at a manual and says, well, if we're running 50 foot, they want us to use a 3/8 and 3/4 inch line set. If we're running 100 foot, they want us to use a 7/8 and a 3/8 line set. And you wonder, why is that? Well, it matters, okay? Over time, it matters, all right? So the longevity of the compressor will depend on how you do that, all right? So Terry from Michigan, Rob from San Antonio, and anyone else that got anything out of this, it's just good to be back doing a video. It's been months, maybe 5, I don't know. But I hope that helped you. Again, I'm Don Gillis from Emerson Educational Services. Be good to each other out there, be safe, and remember, always lock out, tag out. Have a great day now. Bye.